Trade reports are escalating for the Pittsburgh Penguins as multiple insiders have revealed that one Penguin in particular will be traded this offseason. We're going to break down who that is and what that means for the Pittsburgh Penguins moving forward as Kyle Dubas' master plan continues to unravel in front of our very eyes. We're going to break that all down in this episode of Penguins Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the Pittsburgh Penguins through a pretty busy offseason, it sounds like it's about to pick up with a couple players being moved via trade, go down below and hit that free subscribe button. This is the place to be for all your daily Pittsburgh Penguins content. But Nick, let's dive right into it today. We have a couple reports from a couple different insiders on what's happening with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this one is from Jeff Merrick to start. And he said that Erik Karlsson, that's the player we're going to be focusing on today. Of course, there's lots of rumors about Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell, but Erik Karlsson, it sounds like a trade could happen this summer, and that he's always been attached to the Panthers, which is an interesting one. We'll get to that in a second. But every year that he's heard that Erik Karlsson could be traded, it's been that the Panthers have been interested in Karlsson. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if he's going to move somewhere, maybe throw a dart there. And that's the initial report there. And then, of course, from Chris Johnson, he also said that Erik Karlsson is willing to be moved. He would waive his no movement clause. Obviously, Pittsburgh views him rightly as an asset, and obviously don't want to give him away for free. More on that later in the video as well. Stay tuned for that. But it becomes a pretty movable object if, of course, he waives his no movement clause and they retain some salary, which they can. Now, to me, the Florida Panthers, there's another report here that from Marco that maybe the Anaheim Ducks have called as well. The Red Wings, Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know if that makes too much sense for a couple of the teams here. But, Nick, I'll throw it over to you. Does it make sense for the Anaheim Ducks, who have almost $30 million in cap space, or does it make sense for the Florida Panthers, who are already in overage this offseason and somehow locked up three of their best players? Like, what do you see from this situation?
Well, I think there's two sides to this in terms of what makes sense and what doesn't. Of course, logistically, the Florida Panthers really don't make sense. But stylistically, I love Erik Karlsson on the Florida Panthers. The Atlantic Division would just get even more stacked. But even the Panthers have kind of done this before, where they take swings on guys that aren't playing at the top of their ability on bad teams.
Yep.
Literally, look at the Panthers' second right defenseman in Seth Jones. They got him at a little bit of a retention there at $7 million. He comes into Florida, plays big minutes, kind of recouped his value there. I mean, they're not going to trade him, but he's playing at a higher value than he was obviously in Chicago. And I thought this was obviously I don't have any proof to this, but I thought Erik Karlsson made a lot of sense for the Panthers even last season before the Seth Jones trade, especially if they wanted some insurance for Aaron Ekblad. I thought that did make a lot of sense. Again, Darius, you mentioned they were able to keep all of Bennett, Marchand, and Ekblad, so that was good for them, I guess. But on the Anaheim Ducks side, for me, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. I think they're going to be a strong team, but Erik Karlsson just seems like a guy you just have to have. Even then, like Jackson, I think Jackson Lacombe was pretty solid last year. They already have the vet, I think, in guys like Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider. I don't think they really need an Erik Karlsson. I know it's enticing given the amount of cap space they have. I think the Ducks are going to be a solid team. Like Lucas Dolstall down there, I think he still needs a new contract, but he's a really good anchor in net. And they have some good young forwards. McTavish obviously still needs a new deal. So, when you show that screenshot of the cap, it's a lot. They will probably still have a lot after the Dolstall and McTavish contracts. And I just don't see the timeline matching up. Erik Karlsson's older. I don't even know why he would want to go to Anaheim. I guess the weather is pretty nice. I've been to Anaheim. It's pretty nice over there. But I think Florida makes sense. Again, you asked me what makes more sense. I think Florida, logistically, it's not my job. So I don't know how they would get it done. But I would love Erik Karlsson in Florida. I think it makes a lot of sense for them. Tail end of his career, go where the weather's really nice. I think when you go to a place where the weather's really nice, your career lasts a little longer because you never have to wear a jacket. So I think it's a good fit for him if he were to go there.
I think the Penguins are in an interesting spot too, where if you look, and I like what you said in terms stylistically with the Florida Panthers, he does make a lot of sense there, and they just signed Petrie to an but a league minimum deal to shore up their defense as well, because they've lost a lot of pieces since winning the Stanley Cup. We all know what that's about, especially with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if you look at the top of their lineup, they're not trading Reinhart, Barkov, Verhaeghe, like Bennett, Kachuk. Like they kept all these guys for a reason. Lundell, Marchand, like they're not trading any of them. But I do wonder, with some contracts coming to an end and the fact that they are right up against the cap, as you can see, or not even right up against it, they are over it, that they have to make some moves. I wonder if you can sneak like a Listerainen, or could I interest you in an Evan Rodriguez again for the Pittsburgh Penguins to come in and teach some of the younger guys what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. And not just that, I'm not saying a swap like that. That makes no sense. You would absolutely get futures out of the Florida Panthers as well. But I could see it stylistically making some sense. Now with the Anaheim Ducks, I actually think in terms of futures, you could get way better players. So while it doesn't really make sense for the Ducks to make this move, so it's less likely, you can get better players who are younger right now that can make a difference for the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? So they're not trading a lot of their top guys, but I look at a guy like Zellweger that maybe could be on the way out, and he has some NHL experience that could interest the Pittsburgh Penguins. He could play, probably top minutes on the Pittsburgh Penguins, if we're being honest at this point, at his age, what he's been able to do, right? But they continue to develop him. So there's a couple guys that are, creeping into the NHL for this organization that could interest, I think, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So things are going to get interesting as we go along here. I want your thoughts on this as well, that, Chris Johnson said that, they're not going to trade Erik Karlsson away for free. This isn't a cap dump situation, that Kyle Dubas and the Penguins actually do believe that he can help a team still out there. Now, while, we can take a look at his stats last year, we know what he did. It's almost exactly equal output to his first season with the Penguins with 53 points in 82 games. He's 2 years removed from that crazy over 100-point season where he won the Norris, but he's 35 years old. I still think he has, especially on another team, some gas left in the tank if he were to play for the Florida Panthers, let's say. What are your thoughts on that? Because it doesn't sound like it's going to be a cap dump. It sounds like they want some really valuable assets in return because they feel like he can help another team win.
Yeah, and I think this all kind of comes down to the rising salary cap, right?
Yeah.
I think if you try and trade Erik Karlsson last year, you're really not getting a whole lot back for him. But I think he makes 10.5. There's some retention there. The Penguins could also look at some retention there, which would raise the return they get and the value on Karlsson. Looking at his stats, he's still a very solid player. As you said, 53 points, 11 goals. Could still do some damage on a power play. We do know there's some long-term injury history with Karlsson that has impacted the fluidity of his skating, especially.
Yep.
But I think in the right role, he can play really well. That's why I really did like the Florida Panthers for him. They seem to always be able to find guys and put them in the correct roles. I think Evan Rodriguez is someone perfect that you mentioned. I think he literally makes almost exactly what the overage is there. It's very, very similar.
Very close. Yep.
So if they just traded him, I don't know how it would work logistically for the Panthers. I honestly think it'd be a perfect fit. You could play him really low in the lineup, and he would do perfect. They did that with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, notably, a couple of years ago. I think they're going to try that experiment again with a guy like Jeff Petrie, so I like that for them. And I think, Kyle Dubas has heard what the offers are, and people are willing to trade actual stuff for Erik Karlsson. And why would you not take advantage of that? You can even wait till the trade deadline or, imminently trade him very soon because, teams are super optimistic during the offseason that every team thinks they're super good. Every team thinks they can make the playoffs, and every team thinks they can add and get one step closer. So if that team is Anaheim, why not try and siphon some draft picks or some extra defenseman like a Zellweger, like you said? I think it makes sense. I think we have to all change our perspectives given the way the cap is going. These guys who are making 10.5 really isn't as much as it used to be. And that can obviously, with some retention, like I said earlier, would be a very, very smart move for Dubas to do. Try and get back anything at this point. I think he made a smart move with the Dummer deal, and I think he's going to continue to make smart moves. He did that a lot in Toronto when they were trying to trade away guys initially. And I think he'll just continue that with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think it's smart to look at Erik Karlsson as an asset.
Yeah, and you saw there, I just flashed it up on screen quickly, that Chris Johnson said it might not happen this summer, but that doesn't mean it won't happen this summer, that they are definitely taking calls and seeing what's out there. And this is an interesting point because you bring up, Matt Dumba as well, the trade that they just made a couple of days ago. Kelsey brings up that, the right side is pretty log jammed, for lack of a better term, on the Pittsburgh Penguins right now. They just got Dumba. He's going to play in the NHL this year. So they got Dumba. They just signed Connor Clifton in free agency as well. They obviously have Kris Letang still and Erik Karlsson. That's 4 right shot defensemen. And that, with some of the contracts handed out, that, the left side is pretty much locked up as well, unless they want one guy who's right-handed to play on the left side. I don't know. It just doesn't really make too much sense to me. So something has to give at this point in time, and it's going to get very interesting down the stretch here in the summer because we also heard there's other reports that Kyle Dubas wants to get very active via trade in August. So that's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on too, and that could involve Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell. Like, things are going to get stupid, I think, in August a little bit around the league. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But let us know how you feel in the comments about Erik Karlsson. What would you like to see in a return? What team makes sense to you? Let us know everything in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Penguins.